They thought he was training an army. They were wrong. Asterisk, when Ibrahim Traoré quietly gathered 60,000 young Africans in secret, the world feared he was building soldiers for war. But the truth was far more dangerous and far more beautiful. Asterisk, it began quietly, almost like a rumor carried by the wind. In the deep green farmlands of Burkina Faso, where the sunrise painted the earth gold, a message started to spread. It moved from the hands of farmers wiping sweat from their brows, to school teachers closing their dusty classrooms, to traders counting coins under flickering streetlights. Each message was short, almost mysterious. Asterisk, come, your future is waiting. Bring only your courage. Asterisk, no one knew exactly who sent it, but whispers hinted it came from the young president himself, Ibrahim Traoré. In villages, mothers kissed their children's foreheads and watched them walk away with nothing but a small bag, their hearts pounding with both pride and fear. From the bustling streets of Ouagadougou to the smallest mud brick settlements, they came, on foot, on bicycles, squeezed into old buses with cracked windows. They traveled through rain and heat, sleeping under the stars when the road became too long. By the time they reached the meeting place, a vast open field outside the capital, the crowd had swelled to an ocean of 60,000 faces. Dust rose beneath their feet as they stepped forward, expecting the clang of weapons, the shouts of commanders, the start of a military life. But instead, they found neat rows of tables stacked with books, computers humming under the shade of large tents, and strange but beautiful tools, farming machines, solar panels, microscopes. Confusion rippled through the crowd. This was not a camp for war. It felt like a place for building. Then, across the field, they saw him, Traoré, standing simply, no medals, no guards blocking the way. His eyes swept over them with pride, as if he already saw what they could become, and in that moment, the mystery deepened. Asterisk, the murmurs faded when Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, the sun casting a sharp shadow behind him. He wore no suit, no polished boots, only a plain shirt, and a well-worn cap pulled low over his brow. His voice, steady but warm, carried across the field without a microphone. You are not here to fight each other, he began, pausing just long enough for the words to settle. You are here to fight the real enemies, poverty, ignorance, and the chains that have held Africa down for too long. His eyes moved from face to face, as if speaking to each person alone. The world believes I called you to build an army, he continued. They are wrong. I called you to build a future. A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. He spoke of a continent where engineers replaced warlords, where doctors reached every village, where farmers fed not just their families, but entire nations, and where inventors turned Africa's resources into power for its own people. Then came the training, not drills or marches, but lessons that lit fires in their minds. Under large tents, groups learned to build solar panels, repair machines, and create irrigation systems. Others studied coding, medicine, and business. A farmer's son learned how to grow 10 times more food from the same soil. A young girl from the city designed a water filter from scrap materials. They worked in teams, blending their ideas, lifting one another higher. Days were long, hands grew calloused, and minds grew sharper. Slowly, the fear of the unknown faded, replaced by a fierce determination. This was not the path they expected, but it was the one they had been waiting for. A path that could change not just their own lives, but the destiny of an entire continent. Asterisk, weeks turned into months, and the transformation was almost unrecognizable. The shy farmer's son, who once struggled to read, now stood confidently over blueprints, explaining how his new irrigation design could bring life to fields that had been dry for years. The street vendor's daughter, who had never touched a computer before, was now building an app to connect rural doctors to patients miles away. Under the blazing African sun, they planted rows of trees where barren land had once stretched endlessly, each sapling a promise for the future. They dug deep wells, bringing clean water to villages that had lived generations without it. Old, abandoned school buildings were painted bright and filled with handmade desks, ready for children who had never seen the inside of a classroom. At night, the field transformed into a place of dreams. Circles of young men and women sat beneath the stars, speaking about ideas, plans, and visions for Africa's future. The air was filled with the sound of laughter, debate, and the rhythmic beat of drums echoing across the land. They were no longer strangers from distant towns. They had become a family bound by a common purpose, and as their skills grew, so did their confidence. They began to realize something powerful. They were not just learning to change their own lives, but to lead entire communities into a new era. The fear that had lingered on the first day was gone, replaced by a fire. In their eyes, they understood now. They were part of something far greater than themselves. A force stronger than any army, built not with weapons, but with knowledge, unity, and unshakable hope. It happened on a bright morning when the camp was alive with the hum of work, hammers striking wood, the whir of sewing machines, the clatter of tools shaping metal. Someone had taken photos, just a few, showing young men and women building solar panels, teaching children under makeshift tents, and planting long lines of green in dusty soil. The images slipped out into the world, carried by social media like sparks in dry grass. Within days, they were everywhere, splashed across newspapers, flashing on television screens, shared in countless languages. Headlines screamed, Traore's secret force revealed. Foreign governments, who had once whispered about his hidden army, now saw something far more unsettling, a disciplined, united generation trained not for war, but for independence. In conference rooms thousands of miles away, powerful leaders stared at the photos in silence, realizing that no amount of money, propaganda, or control could stop what they were seeing. For the first time in decades, Africa's story was being told without pity or manipulation, and it was a story of strength. Journalists flooded to Burkina Faso, trying to understand how 60,000 youths had been trained without foreign funding, without foreign instructors, and without foreign permission. When they asked the graduates about their work, the answers were simple but unshakable. We are building our future in villages across the continent. Young people saw the images and began to dream bigger, wondering if they could be part of something like this. The world had expected soldiers with rifles. Instead, it saw builders with tools, thinkers with books, and leaders with vision. And for many watching, that was far more dangerous to the old order than any army could ever be. When the training finally ended, the 60,000 did not march away in uniform columns. They scattered like seeds across the wind, each carrying within them the power to transform. In the north, a young man returned to his village and built a solar-powered water pump, ending the decades-old struggle for clean water. In the south, a woman opened a small clinic that saved lives with both modern medicine and local knowledge. Others started schools under mango trees, where children learned not only to read and write, but also to dream without limits. Small farms became thriving enterprises, run with new techniques that turned poor soil into fields rich with crops. Businesses appeared where there had been empty streets, and communities began to feed, heal, and educate themselves without waiting for foreign aid. The 60,000 had multiplied, not in number, but in influence, as each person trained others, passing on their skills like a torch in the darkness. Ibrahim Traoré watched from a distance, knowing that his vision had taken root. He had not built an army to fight with guns. He had built a force that no weapon could defeat, a generation armed with knowledge, unity, and belief in their own strength. Across Africa, whispers grew into voices, and voices into a roar. If they can do it, so can we. The world, once confident in its control over the continent, now faced a truth it could not unsee. The future was no longer something to be given or withheld. It was already being claimed, and in the heart of Burkina Faso, under the same sky where it had all begun, the seeds of change had taken hold, growing quietly, powerfully, and forever. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with the world. Subscribe to Faso Histories for more powerful stories that bring Africa's spirit to life.